Well, the reality is I just want to create opportunities for folks. I want to be an advocate for our neighborhoods. I want to be an advocate for working families. And the fact is it's rooted in my own personal experience growing up as a, migrant farm worker. We struggled a lot and we would work 12-hour days just to make ends meet. But it was people who were advocates for us that gave us an opportunity. I got a chance to go and get an engineering degree at Sac State, but interestingly enough, I took my mother as well. I guess you could say I was her advocate, where she joined me and got her uh, GED and her AA degree there as well at the age of 50. And watching her go from a fourth grade education to restarting her life, to me, that was an inspiring thing to watch and to see that if we have elected officials who are advocates for their community, for the families, and we can change a lot of things. And that's why I changed careers and went to go work in the state legislature on education, on workforce policy, on housing policy. Yes, on infrastructure policy too, because being an engineer, I have that to offer as well. But I spent that time, basically advocating consistently for our working families to making sure that folks have an opportunity. So as much as people say that it's difficult to watch, I mean, I've lived through tougher times, than just being yelled at a council meeting or in the public. Really, it's that heart about creating opportunity. And it's what's the focus of my campaign, to making sure that we have a brighter future for the kids. In fact, I've got two kids that I hope that they will stay in the area. If they want to go somewhere else, fine, but I hope that they would want to stay here in our own community and prosper as well. So making sure that we're creating those opportunities for folks is what's the biggest driver. And the fact is, there's so much need here. There are so many families who are in two jobs, trying to make ends meet. They have right now we live in an environment where households have to be two-income households to meet the cost of housing. So making sure that we're addressing the major issues of housing, the cost of housing, the impacts on that it's led to with low wage jobs, and making sure we're bringing more high wage jobs, and making sure we get ahead of all the substance abuse, the mental health issues, so we can tackle homelessness. All of those key things, if we focus on building safer and healthy communities and strengthening our families, that to me is what drives me every day trying to make a change here for California, but more specifically for our greater Sacramento region, the city of Elk Grove, South Sac, and Sacramento.
And I think one of the interesting things about your race in particular is that it's essentially city council versus city council, because you and your opponent both have the city council experience. Other experiences aside, it's an interesting element. Both of you both seeking to take the next step up in your evolution in public service. So I guess the question for you here is, how do you feel that being on city council is going to translate to being in the state assembly if you get elected? How does that help you?
Well, first of all, one, I've worked in the state Senate and the state assembly for almost 19 years. And so if I get elected, or when I get elected, I should knock on wood here, I wouldn't be looking for the bathroom day one. Many times it takes legislators 4 or 5 years before they even understand how it works. That's the first key thing. Second, I've also, chaired our county planning commission. So before I even was on the city council, I chaired our entire Sacramento County Planning Commission. So I understand our housing, regional needs, the land use issues, even issues that affect our environment. I stopped this illegal mining that was having on the Consumnes River levee that could have completely destroyed the environment of our South County area. And in the city council of Sacramento, unlike the city of Elk Grove that doesn't manage the fire department and doesn't really manage most of the parks in the area, that's a special district that does it. Being a council member for the city of Sacramento, you actually have more economic development responsibilities. You have a full fire department. You have a full parks and recreation department that you manage. All of those key things give me a broader sense of actually the work that's involved. That's why the Sacramento Bee endorsed me over my opponent, because one, I wasn't appointed to the council. I actually ran to be on the city council. Two, I've actually got accomplishments to deliver, such as the Biotech Center Aggie Square project that's bringing in thousands of jobs, expanding the St. John's Center for Real Change, Women's Shelter for Kids, and actually seeing We used the Home Key project to even build more transitional housing with that. And most recently, and since even I was on the planning commission, building more affordable housing. So the difference really in this is both the service that I've done on the city council for almost 8 years and a prior experience on the county planning commission. And even before then, I was appointed to the board of trustees for the Cal State University system. So understanding how our major universities like Sac State that provides so many resources and job opportunities for folks here. To me, that's the big difference. All you have to do is look at my vote record and the vote record of my other council member, and you'll see that I've produced more housing, more job opportunities, addressed the human trafficking issue. I passed a human trafficking ordinance to go after the illegal massage parlors that were creating indentured servants and making sure that we were highlighting the need to support those victims of sex trafficking, as well as during the pandemic, making sure that all the organizations that were providing resources to communities got funded, because I also chair the County Employment Training Agency. So the difference in between the two councils and the experience is that I actually have a regional experience. I chaired our library authority that helped expand the Elk Grove Library. So while I was chair, we saw that the current Elk Grove Library at Elk Grove Boulevard needed to expand. So as chair of our county library authority, I worked with the mayor, Bobby Singh Allen, and supported that effort at the regional level. As chair of the air quality management district for our entire county, the difference in that is, one, I was able to bring resources from the state and federal government to electrify all the school buses in Elk Grove and in Sacramento. And the difference there is now Sacramento and Elk Grove have the first and second largest electric school bus fleet in the nation, so that kids aren't stuck next to a diesel vehicle all day long. As well, as being the chair of our solid waste authority as well. These are major issues in the state. The fact is, people also forget that when you throw your trash in the garbage can, it has to go somewhere. So I also took on that role. And I'm a member of our transportation authority for the region. So making sure that our roadways are going to be improved and managed well so that we have a better, healthier environment. That, I think, is the big key here in this race. It's not just one council over the other, but frankly, I'll say this. I have never believed that it should be one city versus another. And regardless of where the elected official lives, they have to represent everyone. So, if the voters have me to the state assembly, I'm going to be a proud representative of not just Elk Grove, but also the unincorporated areas of the county of South Sacramento and the unincorporated areas of the Vineyard community as well. So the important thing to say is I think those who make it at Elk Grove versus Sacramento is already creating the division and the parochialism that has, frankly, allowed a lot of things from having progress, such as homelessness. That parochialism of Elk Grove versus Sacramento is problematic. I know Elk Grove passed a homeless enforcement ordinance, but to do what? Just move them to the county and not really solve the issue. We have to think regionally about these issues. Our issues of homelessness, of air quality, of job opportunities, of the economy and housing are all regional issues. And that, I think, is the difference between this council member running for assembly, wanting to represent everyone in Assembly District 10.
Transitioning from there, the big number one issue is the economy, inflation in particular. Inflation is a topic that a lot of people don't really associate with, the on the ground local government level of the city council. Given your experience in Sacramento, why should people trust you to come up with the answers if you get elected?
Well, number one, because when dealing with inflation and the cost for families, you have to do a couple things, is figuring out where the costs are coming from. Clearly in this region, the cost of housing is growing. So making sure that we're building enough housing supply. And also, as an assembly member, I would work with the Attorney General to go after those cities that aren't building enough housing, that's creating that pressure on the cost of rent and housing in our area, so that every city is doing their part to build the amount of housing for their workforce, so that cost of housing isn't blowing up the pocketbook. The other is also increasing the skill, the wage level of your community by making sure you train people and educate people. My story about my mother getting her GED and her AA degree at 50 is a good example of how she restarted her life. And so I've made sure that We supported our adult schools like the Charles A. Jones that's training people in manufacturing. Those are jobs that pay well above the minimum wage with medical and retirement. And that way you can go after and make sure you're increasing the wages. The other thing, as I would go after the price gouging at the gas pump right now. The increase in prices at the gas pump and the gouging that's happening doesn't just affect you as a consumer that has to drive to work or to school or to the doctor, but it then increases the cost to the restaurants, to our businesses, to everyone associated with it. So I would be a strong voice for our families to address that the issue of inflation. Again, most importantly, it's making sure that we're increasing the resources so that dual income families can actually have the income to support their kids and their families and their needs by making local jobs. Here's the other thing too that I will say: cost of housing is one big issue. The cost of transportation is the other. But if we don't focus on creating local jobs here in our region, then people have to drive out. That means that's hours away from their family. That means that's cost for them as well. So that's why you can trust me as a council member, because I actually worked with our manufacturers to expand the manufacturing in our area with Mitsubishi Ryan, to expand our manufacturing and support our manufacturers like Procter and Gamble, who are, if you use Tide, that's what they make out here as well. HB Hood is also as well. We worked to create more jobs there, and also the Aggie Square, project that's going to bring not only 4,000 construction jobs, but 3,500 ongoing jobs that are not only four-year degrees and professional degrees, but also technical assistance, clerical jobs that pay above the minimum wage, but with health benefits. So to address those big issues, we need to make sure we focus on those key things: cost of housing, cost of the price gouging at the pumps, and making sure that we're increasing the wage level and the skill level of our community so that we have safe and strong families.
I'm glad you mentioned the cost of housing, because that was another one of the big issues that people are concerned about. No surprise, buying a home is expensive, even in Sacramento. Elk Grove, I know recently I did a story about it. The average price of a home there is about $660,000, more than a shade than what, the average Joe might be able to afford on a given day. So the question for you again is, when it comes to affordable housing, what exactly is the problem here, and how do we find an answer?
Yeah, clearly cities have to be committed to supporting the mixed of income housing, the mixture of types of housing. Not every young family can afford to buy a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom, 3-car garage house, but that's the only thing that they've been building. And in places, unfortunately, the leaders in Elk Grove have been turning down affordable housing projects. And we need to make sure that we're building a mixture of housing. We need to make sure that we have permanent supportive housing. We need to make sure that we have apartments for our young professional. We need to make sure that we have smaller units for our middle class families that can't afford those homes yet, so that as they buy one product, they can then sell and move to another one. But if we don't have that mixture of housing, then we're never going to solve that issue. I'm proud to say that since I was a planning commissioner, I led the effort to make sure that we were building a mixture of housing, of both affordable housing, market rate housing, different sizes of housing, and making sure that we have a product that meets the needs of the community. As an assembly member, I would make sure that every region is doing their part to do that. Because if we don't make sure that everyone's doing their part, then you're going to have these commute patterns that are unhealthy for the environment, that create more gridlock and traffic, so that people can actually just afford to live. And I've knocked on a lot of doors in Elk Grove where people are renting homes and they're paying, $2,500, $2,700 a month just to rent a home. That's more than a mortgage. And that's because we haven't built the right amount of size of housing for the families that need it as well. So for me, that's, I think, the big key thing is a mixture of housing and then infill. We have areas, I'm proud to say that I'm working already. You can drive down Stockton Boulevard and see the construction of this mixed income housing of 200 units. This is for our grocery workers, our teachers, our clerical workers who can't afford the market right now. That's, those are townhomes as well, not just big apartments, but there are different types of housing that we can do. So it's all about how the experience that I've had both doing the planning commission work, the city work, but also my work at the state level, advocating for policies that are changing it, making it easier for housing. That's one thing I was proud to say that we're not only to create a fee reduction program in Sacramento to reduce the fees for housing and for housing construction, but also to reduce the permitting requirement and make it easier to permit as well. The bureaucracy, it can be so difficult sometimes that we need to make sure that it's more realistic to be able to produce the housing we need.
I'll ask you, well, when we talk about the problem with homelessness, what exactly is the problem and where do you begin?
Unfortunately, cities and counties across the state are facing basically what is years and decades of failures from the state that's been pushing down the problem of homelessness onto the cities. From the time that Governor Reagan closed the mental hospitals but didn't open up the regional centers, you created a situation where the counties were already set to fail without the local infrastructure. Pete Wilson, during the 1991 recession, then created realignment that forced all the mental health services and substance abuse services out onto the counties again. And it was a recession, so the counties didn't have any resources to deal with the issue. And then in 2010, again, that realignment put all of the pressures down on the counties again, and all the psychiatric acute centers were only in the state correctional facilities. Well, we moved a lot of people. The state moved a lot of people down to the county correctional facilities where there were no services, and now people were being released without any substance abuse, without any mental health services, and also without the counties having the resources to do it. So that's one issue. So what needs to happen here is, one, the state needs to take ownership again of this problem and fund the counties and the cities and reduce the restrictions and barriers for counties to use the money that they already have. Sometimes the counties have so many pots of money and they can't even pool the money together to make it effective. The other thing that I would do is I'd be the adult in the room and stop the parochialism, stop the finger pointing between one jurisdiction or another. Elk Grove passing an ordinance that fines homeless people who don't have money and then enforces on them and pushes them into the county doesn't solve the problem. What I would advocate as a state assembly member is coordinated enforcement, coordinated access to care, and coordinated communication between jurisdictions so that we can address the issue of homelessness by getting people into the services that they need, the coordinated enforcement and cleanup on some of the encampments, but most importantly, not pushing the problem to one another and actually trying to manage the solution in a way that recognizes the complexity of housing. I'm proud to have worked with St. John Center for Real Change to expand their Women and Children's Center that has actually, if you look at the point in time count, reduced the number of families in the street. While we have more single individuals still on the street, we've actually reduced the number of families and children on the street because we've used the wraparound services. We've used models that work, that have housing as well with it, and then that pathway of workforce to get people on their feet. I'm proud to have worked with Sacramento Self-Help Housing to expand and support their scattered site models, where people get on their feet as well and be able to have housing and a mentor to be able to move them through that process. But to be able to really solve this, we have to have our regional jurisdictions working together. And I would be that adult in the room, making sure that the city and the adjacent counties, and the cities and the county are not pointing fingers, not fear mongering, but actually having sober conversation and honest conversations on how to solve the problem. The last piece is making sure that we don't repeat the mistake of the past. The CARES court or mental health court diversion for substance abuse and mental health treatment is one that we have to make sure that as it's moved into law, that it's also funding, the state is also funding the counties so that the diversion is there to actually make the change. Folks who can't make a decision for themselves because of substance abuse or mental health issues or challenges, that's what the mental health diversion courts are for, but making sure that the state also don't repeat when Governor Reagan closed the mental hospitals, not opening up the regional centers. We got to make sure that the state also funds the local county services to make sure that those courts work, that the diversion programs work effectively.
We've had some high profile shootings in Sacramento, not necessarily in this assembly district, but we can feel the reverberations kind of impacting us nonetheless from K Street, L Street, and in multiple different instances, even catalytic converter thefts seem to drive everyone absolutely mad. That's kind of a wide net, but I'm asking you about crime. What exactly do you see as the big issues when it comes to crime, and what are the steps to address them?
Well, number one, we need to enforce the laws once they're broken. But most importantly, we have to stop this systemic problem of the revolving door that we have currently in our county jails, in our state correctional facilities. The fact that the recidivism is so high, and we're allowing folks to continue to replicate their issues or fall back into their past criminal activity is a problem. Number one, we have to go in and look at the way that the parole system and the probation system is managed. I know this personally because my father was both in the state and the and county correctional system, and when he was released, he was set to fail. There wasn't he didn't have any job training when he came out, and he didn't have any resources. So fortunately, he had two young sons and a daughter who stepped in, but not everybody does, and in fact, most people don't. And so if we don't change the recidivism, but making sure that people are while they're doing their time and as a condition of their release, that they have the tools and the skills. We have a shortage of construction trade and skilled workers. We should be using that time to train people in the skill that gives them hope and opportunity so they don't come out and repeat and reoffend. That'll help reduce the workload on our probation officers and our parole officers, so that they can be focused on the folks that they see and deem that are potential violent threats to the community. So number one, we have to do that. The second thing is starting early, making sure that we're starting early with our young kids to make sure that we're giving them the skills and tools so that they don't go into and get engaged in the life of crime. If you see some of the folks who have been involved in some of the gun usage, they're young people. And so we got to make sure that early on we address those pieces of making sure that we don't have, that we're putting the energy for after school programming, that we're putting the energy and supporting our youth, and that we make sure that we're not, that we're giving them the tools to succeed as well. When it comes to the issue of making sure that also our law enforcement, our police departments are appropriately funded. That is a key thing, but most importantly, that we're recruiting and hiring from our local community. Because when we do that, then you have law enforcement that knows the community, that understands the relationships. And I'm proud to have been working with that in the city of Sacramento by working with my alma mater, Sac State, and making sure that we're also supporting those programs for recruiting locally from our area. Plus, when we recruit law enforcement from our local area, they're less likely to transfer and leave to another jurisdiction, because they want to be around their family, just like everyone else. They want to be around their family and serve the community that they've grown up in. You bring a little more ownership and trust from the community as well.
All right, Eric, that wraps up all my questions. I'm going to throw it back to you. If there's anything else you want to mention, just to kind of send the final salvo out there, what do you say to these people as they head to the ballot box?
Well, first, I would say I'm excited about this opportunity to be a strong advocate for our neighbors in our community. And second, I would say that I'm proud to have had the endorsement of the Sacramento Bee, to have also the endorsement of our Elk Grove and Sacramento firefighters, our nurses, our teachers. And when you read some of these endorsements and talk to them, the reason that they're endorsing me is because I'm the candidate that's ready to lead, with the experience, with an actual vote record, with actual accomplishments that show, and with also the values to represent our community. I'm proud to also be endorsed by the Democratic Party as well, to be endorsed by Planned Parenthood, the only candidate endorsed by Planned Parenthood and the Democratic Party in this race as well. And also I'm proud to be endorsed by entities that sometimes may be at odds or may be at conflicts. Proud to be endorsed by our local Sacramento Sierra Labor Council, but also by the Sacramento Metro Chamber of Commerce, because they know I can be a problem solver to move things forward and to lead on issues. And most importantly, I'm proud to be endorsed by many members in our community who are on the grassroots, just like when I was active in my neighborhood association as a neighborhood association leader and president. I've got the support of so many of our neighborhood association leaders, not only from Sacramento, but from Elk Grove. I've got the support of the Sacramento Filipino American Association, the Asian Pacific Labor Alliance, the Sacramento Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and all different groups here that are advocating for this great race. So I want to say that my campaign is about community and opportunity, and I hope that you guys, the voters out there, will look at our record and see that I have the best record to represent the state assembly.